As I mentioned several times, I never know when this starts as regards to sound. Picture starts right away, but the sound doesn't always start right away for some wacky reason. I've got to maybe Google that or AI it. I wonder if is that a verb nowadays? Can you AI something? So I don't know. I'm sure if it isn't already, it will be soon. But anyway, to get on with today's reading, once again, it's from our good friend, Reverend David Ault, and my mouse is just not behaving, Sport. Come on, Sport. There we go. It's called Bear the Unbearable, and the first quote is from Ram Dass. That's kind of odd because I was down at Creative Life Spiritual Center today for a service. And afterwards, we had some visitors. Actually, they're members of our community, but they're distant members. 2 from California and 1 from Princeton, New Jersey. So I took them in our bookstore because we have a pretty good bookstore at our center. And the first book that caught my eye, believe it or not, was Ram Dass. And the quote today is from Ram Dass. So, you know what they say, there are no coincidences. And this is what Ram Dass says. He says, for something in you dies when you bear the unbearable. And it's only in that dark night of the soul that you are prepared to see as God sees and to love as God loves. And that was Ram Dass. And he was one of the great spiritual teachers of the 20th century. Pretty hard-nosed teacher as well. He didn't pull any punches, so. And he passed away. I think he passed away sometime in the early part of the 21st century. So just comment on that. In one sense, you can never see as God sees, and you can never love as God loves because God is infinite. Reverend Jesse, our senior minister, who does most of our talks, some of us get the opportunity now to get to do talk, but he's the main speaker. And he was saying today that often he's confused about whether to use the word God or spirit, grand of all being, etc., etc. And he said, but the odd thing is when he doesn't use the word God and he comes up with some alternative, like the divine presence, whatever, somebody always comes up to him after his talk and says, why didn't you use the word God? So, but I understand why it's an issue with lots and lots of people, because they've had better experiences of it. Personally, I didn't. I managed to roll with the punches. Reverend Jesse said he rolled with the punches, but there you are. But the important thing is, I don't think you can see as God sees or love as God loves, because God is infinite and God's love is truly unconditional. It's not conditioned on anything. And for a human being to do anything unconditionally is either incredibly difficult or not possible. We can't really see as God sees because God's infinite and God's got the big picture. But in another sense, we can see as God sees and we can love as God loves. Why? Because we're expressions of God. So when we love and when we see, we're doing it as God. So we do see as God sees and we do love as God loves. So it's kind of depends which way you look at it. The next quote is actually from the Science of Mind textbook, but it's not the one that we all use. The one we all use is the 1930s edition. This is from the previous edition, the 1926 edition. Ernest Holmes wrote 2 versions of it, one in 1926, and then when it came to the 1930s, he rewrote the book again, or he changed some parts of it. So this is from the earlier edition, which most people don't have. And it's if you do, it's on page 162. And he says, Ernest Holmes, the illusion is in the way we look at things. We've looked at some things and they've looked evil to us. We must look at them until they look good. In other words, you must look beyond them. But it's not easy. It isn't easy in this time of division. Maybe there's always been a time of division, but right now it seems that, especially in politics, we're polarized. And it's really hard to see through everything into ultimate goodness. But that's part of our job. And this is from our writer who says, I remember something ancient within me. I know how to bear the unbearable. This remembrance whispers, you were born for this. He goes on to say, not born to suffer, but born to transmute, born to expand beyond the illusion of separation and reclaim the truth of my bodhisattva nature, which he describes as compassion in motion, which of course is a Buddhist expression for someone who has reached enlightenment. He says, I release the part of me that believes in the weight of limitation. In its place rises a remembrance of my infinite self, opening wider than my sorrow. My hands become extensions of love. My feet, pathways of service. My heart, an altar where pain transforms. And this is kind of like Francis of Assisi, St. Francis of Assisi, who I think he was the one who said, we're the hands, we're the feet, etc. of God. And then our writer this month goes on to say, he says, as in the Buddhist practice of Tonglen meditation, I draw into the altar of my heart those who are grieving and frightened. As Jesus became a conduit for absorbing human forgiveness, as Amma, the hugging saint, embraces and absorbs the burdens of those she holds, and as the Indian sadhu eats the karma of those trapped in the illusion of duality, so too do I enter the consciousness of the One and emit it through every thought, every word, and every deed. He says, I anchor in these eternal truths, even in the apparent absence of wholeness. Why? Because even in that apparent absence, there is wholeness. Even in the apparent absence of illusion, yep, there is solution. Even in the apparent absence of right action, guess what? Yes, there is right action. Even in the apparent absence of love, guess what? Yes, there is and always will be love. So it's a hard lesson. It's a hard lesson to get beyond our ego self. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those who describes the ego as edging God out. I think the ego has got a perfectly valid place as part of us. It's how we communicate and interface with the world. That's the ego. But it shouldn't be in control. So what we're talking about here is when we're beyond ego control. So when we're able to do all these things, we are beyond the control of our ego. Are these things easy? No. It's like Reverend Jesse said this morning. He reminded us again, do your spiritual work. To do these things, you have to do your spiritual work. Because if you don't, the odds are you won't. It's just like, I was watching the TV this morning and one of the anchors on one of the programs was about to run the New York Marathon. I guess she's long since finished with it now because this was early this morning. But she had to train for it. She couldn't, maybe there are a few other individuals on earth who can just go out and run a marathon without thinking about it, without training. But by and large, everybody who was out there in that marathon, 55,000 people involved in the marathon, I would say that almost all of them had to train. They had to get up to that standard. And even the ones who were doing relay marathons, there were several of them involved in running the marathon. They got to train. And just like that, to be a spiritual master or mistress, you have to do your spiritual work. And that's what we're all on the path towards, whether we know it or we're not. We're on the path to becoming, in Buddhist terms, bodhisattvas, in Christian and Islamic and Jewish terminology, it will be a saint. So we're on that path. And even though we don't think we are. And we may be way, way down on the path, but we're on the path. And it may, who knows, take more than one lifetime to get there, but we're all on the path. That's what I believe. That's what Ernest Holmes believed. Every single one of us is on the path. The affirmation, which I actually used for my daily thought for the day today, because the other two books I had, I didn't like them. I like the books. I didn't like the readings for today. I'm willing to see God in all things. I am willing to see God in all things. And if you want to change that, I'm willing to see the divine in all things. I'm willing to see spirit in all things. I'm willing to see the groundable being in all things. Change it. But I think that's a good affirmation. And it's one towards which we all should be striving. I'm willing to see God in all things. And Reverend Lisa, tomorrow morning at 9:15 on Creative Life Spiritual Center's Facebook page, will be showing you how in other ways to start seeing God in all things. So until next time, namaste.